Greetings. Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. I'm Lexi Eve, and welcome back to another Walk Magick video. Today, I have a great subject for us to analyze together, and that is the Pentagram of Eliphas Levi. Real quick, don't forget, we are on the road to 1K subscribers, and if we make it by the spring equinox of 2024, I'm going to be giving away a free Stele replica, which you can see on your screen now. So, friendly reminder, hit the subscribe button, like, comment, share this video. All of that helps to reach more viewers. So with that, let's begin. Found in Levi's Dogme et Rituel de la Haute Magie are many thought-provoking images penned by Levi himself. You can see his lord above and below, the sign of benediction, and today's subject, a very unique pentagram. It's complete with magical weapons surrounding it, and most unique, eyes on the uppermost point. In this video, I am going to break down all of the symbolism in Levi's drawing and explain what Gnosis Levi was trying to communicate with this depiction. So let's start real quick with the basic symbolism of the pentagram. It's no coincidence that this image appears in chapter 5, attributed to the letter Haute, the fifth letter, and the chapter is titled The Pentagram in Levi's book. The pentagram has 5 lines and 5 points, 5 being the operative number. Note that 5 squared equals 25, and that 25 is a special number to the pentagram. Thus, Crowley assigned chapter 25 of the Book of Lies to the Star Ruby Pentagram ritual. The pentagram's most basic symbolism is the 5 hermetic elements, which we'll discuss momentarily. But note that 5 is the value of the 5th letter, He, in Hebrew, the feminine letter representing both water and earth in Tetragrammaton. Earth, most specifically, is associated with the pentagram as the 5-pointed star represents earth as the culmination or result of the prior 4 elements, especially in regards to creation. It's very important that we remember which points correspond with which of the 5 elements. That will affect our interpretation later on. So, the top is spirit, though in rituals today, spirit pentagrams are drawn from either bottom point depending on active or passive aspects of the spirit pentagram. I'll cover this more in depth in a greater pentagram ritual video, which is coming soon. So, the topmost point is spirit, then going clockwise, next is water, then fire, then earth, then air. Back to the letter He, that which corresponds with chapter 5 of his book where the pentagram image is found. So the letter He, it corresponds with Aquarius via the Book of the Law. Back in Levi's day, He would have corresponded with Aries, as I assume you are aware of the how and why Crowley switched the correspondences of these 2 letters, He and Zadi, via the Book of the Law. He, corresponding with Aquarius, brings forth both the airy nature associated with the zodiac sign as well as Saturn, the ruling planet of Aquarius. Saturn is very earthy, so it's an air sign with an earthy ruling planet. These, in conjunction with the pentagram, signify the intellect and earthbound nature of man. Being a Thelemite, I consider these ideas now baked into the pentagram, and I'm sure Levi might agree that these ideas are in the pentagram, save for the Hebrew correspondences. Everything else would certainly apply, though for different reasons than which I've provided. Next, let's look at some numerology. By Crowley's definition, the number 5 means, quote, the quinary force or motion, the interplay of the divine will with matter, derived from 2 and 3 by addition, end quote. Also, quote, the mother made flesh, fierce and active, end quote. These are from his Liber 58. And lastly, 5 is the number of Mars, the most active and masculine planet save for the Sun, which is more paternal and lordly, whereas Mars is more militant. So, with this information, we can assume that the pentagram, which is so closely linked to the number 5, is a symbol representing the microcosm, flesh and spirit, flesh made conscious and containing the will to go and do. In short, the pentagram at its core represents mankind, each and every one of us. Now, this brings us to the symbolism of Levi's very unique depiction of the pentagram. The most notable thing, literally glaring at us, is the eyes on this image. As I said, the pentagram is a symbol for mankind. The 5 elements, Yod, He, Shin, Vav, He. Tetragrammaton, the four-letter word of power, with the addition of a shin stuck right in the center for fire and spirit, really spirit in this sense. Hence, why Tetragrammaton is written around the pentagram in Levi's version. Above the upper letters of Tetragrammaton are the numbers 1 and 2 on the left, and then 1, 2, and 3 on the right. I believe what is being communicated by 1 and 2 on the left is Platonism's idea of duality. In Dogmic views or terms, we can draw from 0 equals 2, 1 being unity, 2 being spirit made flesh. Then the 1, 2, and 3 furthers this idea. The 1 becomes the 2, becomes the 3 of the supernals, which then births the universe. 1 is the point, 2, the point extended as a line, 2 points connected, and 3 is the first shape you could make, the triangle. The point represents everything in unity, all light without division. The line is the extension of that light. The Trinity is the first closed shape formed by the extension of the light. From the triangle, more complex shapes can arise after it. I have a video on this channel about the symbolic nature of colors, shapes, and numbers, which will give you a more comprehensive view on such things. Now, I've read theories connecting the letters to the numbers appearing above them. For example, the first T having a 1 above it connects tau to the last letter, to 1, Aleph, which is the first letter. Thus, the Alpha and Omega idea is present. Also, Tau, being Earth, the lowest, connects to the highest, like how Keter is in Malkuth. So Tau could represent Yod, and 2, above the E, could represent the second letter of Tetragrammaton, He, making the first Te a glyph concealing Yod He, especially because the Greek E is the fifth letter, just like He. So if you're transliterating, you would turn that E into an He. I'm not sure about this theory completely, but some do hold it. Also, that 3 above the A could signify Aleph spelled in full, which equates to 111, 111, 3 ones. Thus, 3 above the A, 111. Now, the 5 numbered letters could also signify Pentagrammaton. 1 as the fire, highest above all. 2 as the water, which comes as condensation from heat of that fire. The next one is spirit in the middle of these 5 numbers, representing the shin in Pentagrammaton in the middle of Tetragrammaton, the source in the heart of all. Then the next 2 as air, similar to spirit, except that it is a tangible thing with a physical nature. And then the final number being 3 is earth, symbolizing the completion of the process of manifestation. Lastly, 1 plus 2 plus 1 plus 2 plus 3 equals 9. That's 1 number less than 10, the perfect number. This could signify man being imperfect and beneath God. It could also signify Luna, the number 9, instructing one to search their unconscious depths. But knowing Levi's Christian background, these numbers may just signify heaven and earth via 1 and 2, and then in 1, 2, and 3, the Holy Trinity. In fact, this is a very likely possibility. Lastly, on the word Tetragrammaton in this image is that you will notice the 4 elemental weapons, the cup, the wand, then the sword, and the paten, which is concealed in an O of the final syllable, T-O-N, ton. These 4 weapons simply signify the 4 letters of Tetragrammaton, the wand being fire and Yod, the cup being water and He, the sword being air and Vav, and the paten being earth and He final. Note that there are 5 syllables in Tetragrammaton, and 1 weapon is placed next to each of the 4 syllables of the word. And the first syllable, te, te, has no weapon. I believe this was a way of Eliphas Levi implying Pentagrammaton through Tetragrammaton, as te would correspond with spirit, the realm where the other 4 elements issue forth from, the ayin. Implying further that spirit, like the Kabbalistic 0, has no representation and is there before Yod He Vav He, but is silent and invisible. Just like the opening line of the Hebrew Torah, God created the earth, right? It doesn't say that exactly. If you translate the words Bereshit Bara Elohim Et, it literally says, in the beginning created God's essence. If you take those 4 words and you translate them as literal translations. So it implies that nothingness in the beginning created the God's essence. So there's like a pause for that zero, that source of all that has no tangibility in the opening Bible. And I think that's what's going on, why there's nothing surrounding the first syllable here. It's to indicate that nothingness from which everything else stems from. Next, still on the idea of magical weapons, there are 2 daggers concealed in the lower points of the pentagram, helping to make the symbols for Saturn. Thus, the pentagram with eyes representing a person makes the lower points, in this sense, likened unto legs and feet, the points of the body which touches earth when standing. Saturn corresponds with the path of Tau on the lowest portion of the tree of life. It connects Malkuth and Yesod. Malkuth corresponds with the Nefesh, the animal soul, basic primal wants and needs. Yesod is the first of 6 spheres that make up the Ruach, the intellectual part of the soul, that which allows us to think and process experiences and emotions. Tau falls in a liminal space between these two, the Ruach and the Nefesh, and actually corresponds with what is called in the Kabbalah the Guf, meaning either body or sometimes called Otzar, treasury. Besides linking the Nefesh and Ruach and dealing with processing between these 2 aspects of the soul, the Guf, as the treasury of souls, is a realm where souls, or at least particles of the source, are broken off and recycled through incarnations in the physical and spiritual realms. The dagger, being connected to the intellect, and Saturn being Earth, certainly seems to indicate the Guf, thus signaling the eternity of God and reincarnation of man. It also reminds us that even though man is an animal, we are capable of lower tendencies. We should always use our minds to make decisions based on what our higher instincts would have us do. Not to be slaves or base creatures, even when enjoying sensory pleasures. Lastly, these 2 lower points are where you would draw spirit pentagrams from if you're doing such things as circle castings like the LVRP, or the greater ritual of the pentagram, rather. The bottom left-hand point is earth, the bottom right point, fire, the highest and lowest, yet again, and we'll see this concept again and again in this image. But really, what I'm getting at is more evidence of the idea in spirit and flesh. Next up is the 7 planets and their placements in this image. We spoke of Saturn, now let's look at the rest. Mars appears twice. These are in place of where arms would go if this image were a person. The hands are where we extend light, do magic on the astral via magical weapons. Though the one on the left-hand side or right side of this image is actually a conjoined Venus-Mars if you look at it, signifying that every person has both polarities in them. This symbolism is reinforced by the squares in the circles that make up the Mars symbols. The circle squared is outside the scope of this video and requires lengthy explanation, as the circle squared was used by ancient geometrists and alchemists alike. But in short, they symbolize again the union of opposites, especially that of earth and heaven, God and man, micro and macro. That the hands of this pentagram contain this symbol reinforce that magic, especially magic of extending light, is focused through the hands of the magician. Mars is a very active planet. It goes, just like magic is an external doing. Note that these 2 Mars symbols are placed on the points of air and water, and the Venus-Mars conjoined is on the point of water, again symbolizing masculinity and femininity, active and passive. Next are the sun and moon. These are placed on what would be the breasts of this figure. This placement, in my opinion, seems to signify the lower forms of the Ein Sof contained within the magician, especially via their heart, but also the pillars, which each have masculine and feminine qualities. And I find the placements interesting, as the sun is on the line which connects earth at the bottom and spirit at the top, and the moon is placed on the vertex connecting fire at the bottom and spirit at the top. Passive spirit pentagrams are drawn from the earth point, and active spirit pentagrams from the fire point. So the sun is on a very feminine vertex and Luna on a very masculine vertex, really signifying the back and forth between masculine and feminine aspects. Especially like the oneness you would see in the yin-yang symbol, how in the masculine is definite femininity and in the feminine is definite masculinity. Well, the sun and moon definitely signifies the two polarities that, when in union, are likened unto the highest sphere Kether, which is an androgynous sphere containing the seeds of everything in the universe, both polarities. This also indicates the destruction of the ego via the union of opposites. This, being the highest of planets, indicates again the highest source of life in creation. Then, we have a very unique symbol smack dab in the center, right where the heart of a person would be according to this figure. It is a conjoined upright Mercury averse Venus. Not only that, but attached to the bottom of Venus is the caduceus, a symbol of the phallus, like you would see in Baphomet's image. In this case, since Mercury is an androgynous male planet and Venus wholly feminine, this caduceus represents the cates and phallus, the kephale, if you will. Being in the heart center, it reminds us of Tifereth and that the Ruach has Tifereth seated in its center. That the Ruach, like Mercury, corresponds with the element air, the mixing of fire and water, two polarities in one, the result of those two things. Now regarding Mercury-Venus conjoined, we can be reminded of such unions as Hermes and Aphrodite. There, we can see that the androgynous union of opposite sexes, illustrated time and again in this image, connects to aspects not only of the body, earth, flesh, the lowest, not only of the highest, the sun and moon, the logos, God, being received by the mother and father, but now the mind, conscious and unconscious, as a mediary between highest and lowest parts of the internal self. Also, the results of the sun and moon conjoined, like the knight and queen of tarot, I believe is then being indicated via this androgynous offspring, Mercury-Venus, the prince and princess court cards, further indicating the fetus, a genderless babe in the egg, the potential of life which can manifest in any number of infinite ways as it develops. This is what the universe is, infinite potential. That is what humans are, infinite potential. As a Thelemic aside, Thelema is a solar phallic religion, but it is important to remind everyone that males and females are on equal footing in this aeon. Both sexual organs are phallic according to Crowley. All people have both polarities within them, having been made from the same source, which is always in union and thus containing all things. We have that spark of the Ein Sof in us. We have that potential for anything in us. Now the last planet is Jupiter. Above the symbol of Jupiter is a small circle, signifying the third eye, the Ajna chakra. It is like a small point of supernal consciousness, almost like a connection to the kernel of Ein Sof in the heart. Jupiter corresponds with Chesed, the highest sphere below the abyss, the final sphere before the ego is destroyed. Above that is the supernal realm, thus spirit and not anything of flesh or mind, nothing of human nature. Attaining the supernals is coming into union with God, becoming God itself. Thus, as the pentagram is a symbol of the microcosm, we are reminded that the highest a human can ascend on the tree without coming into union with God and destroying their individuality is Chesed, the sphere of Jupiter. Thus, anything above the abyss has little relation to humanness and is then outside the bounds of the symbol of the pentagram. The final part of the symbol that we have to analyze is the 4 Hebrew words scrawled on the pentagram. There are several images of Levi's pentagram floating around, and each has something either typographical or misspelled or just a little bit wrong looking in the words. For example, on the horizontal vertex, connecting the points of air and water, are the 2 words Adam and Eve. In some images, Eve is actually written backwards. The Chet and He should be switched because you read Hebrew from right to left. I'm working off of Greer's translation of this book, which has Eve spelled as He Vav He, which equates to 16 rather than 19. And I actually prefer, even though that is not how Eve is spelled in the Tanakh, I prefer this spelling of Eve. Then below Eve, it is presumed that the word written is Kippur, K being Kaf, P being Pei, R being Resh, Kippur. But the Pei in the center looks awfully like a Samek rather than Pei. And the final word appears to be Pechad, fear, a name of Geborah. In fact, Pechad is the vice of Geborah, but the Dalet at the end resembles more of a Resh than a Dalet, so there's some weird stuff with the words in this image. I wish I could find a first edition printing of Levi's book online that has this image of the pentagram from that. That may help clear things up a bit. I can't find one, so I'm working off of Greer's and other images that I've seen. That said, I'm going to assume that the words that are written are what I think they are, being Adam, Eve, Kippur, and Pechad. This just goes to show you that even an occultist as great as Eliphas Levi may have been prone to making errors. So, just as another aside, please forgive me if I ever make small mispronunciations or just minor details wrong in this channel, if I make a human error. Yeah, I do my best to bring you all the most correct and well-researched information, but we're human and sometimes errors happen. So, let's start with Adam and Eve. These are the biblical first man and woman. Adam was made in the image of the Elohim. He at first was presumably an androgynous being, made in the likeness of Elohim, also androgynous, being that Elohim is the masculine plural of the feminine singular, El. It shows us yet again that both masculine and feminine polarities are within each and every person, much like Baphomet. Also, Eve on the left and Adam on the right signify the pillars of severity on the left and mercy on the right. Unlike before with the sun and moon, they were reversed. Now the female word is on the severity side, the feminine pillar, and the masculine word is on the mercy side, the masculine pillar, which is kind of cool. Adam equates to 45, the mystical number of Yesod, the moon, but also the number of the magical square of Saturn, earth and unconsciousness. Also, Yesod as the phallus. Eve with a chet equates to 19, which gives a few interesting words, such as craving or woe, which indicates a need for perfection. Also under 19 is union, which breeds that needed perfection. Personally, I like the Greek spelling of Eve, which is epsilon digamma epsilon, which also equates to 16, and I find that 16 gives a lot better words, especially in Hebrew, to meditate on. So under 16, we have Eve, he vav he, she, literally like she does, she is a person, she is a kind person, she, elevated, like, equal to. Now she is obvious, Eve. Elevated reflects her initiation by the serpent, and like or equal to reflects that Eve was made from the rib of Adam, signifying that something was taken not from the top of him, nor from the bottom, but from his midsection. That she is made of middle stuff is then equal to him, not above or below. She contains the higher and the lower parts of her partner. Now also what I like about spelling Eve as 16 is Adam 45 plus Eve 16, 45 plus 16 equals 61. The value of Ayin, the Kabbalistic zero, the source of both polarities of creation, which I think is really cool. And that Eliphas Levi puts these on the horizontal vertex, smack dab in the center of the pentagram, being a symbol of man, shows that that source, these two polarities that spell together 61 Ayin, that source of both polarities is in the heart center. It's in the center of your being, just like the kernel of Ein Sof, according to Zohar. The third word we're going to explore is KPR, Kippur, literally translated as village and country. As I said, the P in this word almost looks like a samek. It doesn't really look like a P, but it is a P, KPR. Also, I think he was going for Kippur, like Yom Kippur, meaning atonement, the Day of Atonement, but it's missing a Vav. So I don't know what his intention was, but KPR has a value of 300. So maybe he's implying atonement, but trying to get the value 300, because 300 is the value of Shin, fire and spirit, the Hebrew letter which corresponds with fire and spirit. I don't know what Levi's intention is, but village and country is the word that he used. So this word is on the vertex connecting fire and air. It's actually an apt place for it, considering wind and air often mean spirit. So the fire and spirit of Shin may connect to that idea being conveyed. In addition, 300, the value 300 also gives Kabzal pact, formation, and the god of Chesed and Haute, a permutation, a Timora of Yod He Vav He. Most striking is that Elohim spelled in full is also 300. Those gods, those androgynous gods. Bringing gods in connection with country, also cobs on pact light and extension. Concerning 300 as the value of Shin, and in connection with the Pentagram of Levi, I think that the artist is emphasizing the holy fire as a major theme of the human, or the human being or magician. Further, that your country, your home is meant of your body. That's where your spirit resides. I think that idea is being implied as well. The final word is pechad, fear. The most obvious connection of this word pertaining to the image is that of Gibora, strength, also called din, judgment. Gibora is the 5th Kabbalistic sphere. Its number is 5 that it's associated with, being very closely related with Mars and the pentagram. Pechad, as said earlier, is the vice of Gibora, the opposite of demonstrating strength in judgment. Most apparent in this concept is a person whose job it is to make laws, but fails to do what is necessary and right for fear of political repercussions. Fear in all forms must be uprooted from the magician. We must act on will, divine authority, to do what our spirit guides. To hesitate because of fear is failure and the forerunner of failure. And almost everything in this image is of a very positive nature, save for this one word. In that sense, I think it's making an attempt to balance all of the positive attributes with one big negative attribute, literally the vice of the 5th sphere. Almost like how in magic one must work first with the light and then at some point work moderately with lower forces in order to establish their being in both the heights and the depths. Pechad has a value of 92, and other words with this value include slime, sudden ruin, dunghill, to dig or burrow, but also white, charms or something coveted, mischief, counsel, or prudence. Now, while some words directly indicate lowly, dark, or filthy matters, slime, sudden ruin, dunghill, to dig into the ground, there are a few words that indicate, if not the highest, then patience in work, the means to conquer fear, using your body made of the clay of the earth in order to attain something higher, that kether, that white, that source of light within. Now, I'm going to end the Gematria portion here, and of course, I'm not using all the words. You could see them on your screen in the little screenshot photos that I've posted in the video. If you're really doing Gematria, you're going to want to use all words under each number, and nor am I analyzing each letter pertaining to each word that I'm looking at, nor even looking at the numbers which mathematically make up the value of words in this image. For example, such as how 92 is composed of 2 squared times 23. If one's really trying to get into the nitty-gritty of Gematria, we'd have to take all of that into account. Such work I find is better done solitary with pen and paper rather than in oral form such as this. You just lose the invocation process, it becomes very dry, and you don't get that meditative state, which you should when really considering why such words were chosen for this image. However, I think I also gave enough information to explain fairly deeply why Levi put these words where he did. So with that, I'm ending this talk, hoping that it gave you much to consider, but even more explain. Love is the law, love under will. See you all in the next one.